Just kind of shocking because this is like the second time it's happened so far. Everyone's just been really stressed about it.
A North York high school locked down for the second day in a row.
Tonight, reports of an armed suspect, students on edge. Good evening. Today's lockdown comes as police continue to search for a suspect in an attack there yesterday.
Thankfully, no injuries reported today, but the day of disruption not sitting well with students and staff. CTV's Mike Walker joins us live from Northview Secondary School with the details. Mike.
Well, Nathan, Michelle, for the second day in a row, students at the high school were on alert as they saw the heavy police presence from their classroom window. They are just starting their exams, and they say this is also causing some unnecessary stress. Tense moments and a heavy police presence outside Northview Secondary School for the second straight day, after police received reports of a group of males, one possibly armed with a machete, in the area.
It's really concerning, that this is happening so close to our school.
Toronto police received the call around 11:30 this morning, immediately placing the North York High School near Bathurst and Finch in lockdown. Shortly after, the school was briefly placed in hold and secure while officers investigated. Police confirmed the person who reported the incident did not see a knife and no injuries were reported.
We were kind of pushed into the classroom for an hour, and then after an hour, they told us it got lifted to a hold and secure.
Very quick and effective with everything being done. Toronto police were on site almost immediately, and it was really good to see that they were out there helping.
Yesterday, the high school was placed under lockdown after a teenager was found in the area with serious injuries after allegedly being attacked by a suspect wielding a machete and was seen wearing a horror movie ski mask.
Just kind of shocking because this is the second time it's happened so far. Everyone's just been really stressed about it, but I'm glad it's over now.
I'm not questioning the safety of our school that much, but we're more alert or on guard.
For most of this afternoon, police were seen patrolling the area, including officers with the mounted unit, while investigators searched for any potential evidence connected to this latest incident. Along Finch Avenue, one officer was seen taking pictures of a trail of a red substance in the snow. Students are in the middle of exams and say the back-to-back incidents are extremely stressful.
How are you supposed to take exams seriously when there's police walking in and out of our school? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
It's also leaving some people who live in the area on edge.
We're scared, of course. Especially we're living close here to the school. This is a quiet area.
Now, police have since cleared the scene. As for yesterday's incident, police say they are continuing to search for the suspect and are appealing to anyone with information to come forward. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thank you, Mike. And Toronto police are on the hunt for a suspect in a stabbing near Bloor in Ossington that briefly stopped subway service at Ossington Station this afternoon. Witnesses say a fight broke out along Bloor Street and one person was stabbed before collapsing near a mini-mart on Shaw Street. Toronto police say the suspect was carrying a black backpack and luggage. The victim was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
Still to come tonight, Ontario goes back to the basics for kindergarten students. The education minister announces changes to the curriculum, the ABCs of the plan, and does it add up? Those details still to come.
But first, to a developing story from Ottawa. The Trudeau government's use of the Emergencies Act was unreasonable and not justified and led to the infringement of constitutional rights.
That was the ruling of a federal judge today after the act was invoked by the Liberals to quell the so-called Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver reports.
Justice Richard Mosley ruled that the government's decision led to the infringement of rights protected under the Charter. In his 190-page decision, Justice Mosley said the scope of the regulations was overbroad insofar as it captured people who simply wanted to join in the protest by standing on Parliament Hill carrying a placard. Mosley added that the situation created by the protests didn't meet the high threshold required to invoke the never-before-used act. The decision to issue the proclamation does not bear the hallmarks of reasonableness and was not justified.
The government is issuing an order with immediate effect.
The Liberal cabinet is standing behind its decision, arguing that at the time the public safety of Canadians and Canada's national security was under threat. The government says it intends to appeal today's ruling.
I was certain, after a lot of deliberation with colleagues and many others, that we took the right decision. I was certain at the time. I was certain when I testified before rouleau, and I remain certain today.
The federal government invoked the Emergencies Act in February 2022 in an effort to clear the convoy protests that had become entrenched in Ottawa's downtown core. Experts say the federal court's decision today could open the door to more legal battles.
Anywhere we go from here, this sets a legal precedent. It does make the government vulnerable for people seeking damages now who have had their charter rights infringed per this ruling of the federal court.
Today's decision is different than the Rouleau Commission, which issued a final report last year saying the threshold to invoke the act had been met. But that public inquiry doesn't set any kind of legal precedent. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
It is a messy drive throughout the GTA this evening. A winter weather travel advisory remains in effect in many areas, including Toronto tonight.
The blast of winter weather arriving this afternoon and building throughout the day. Our Sean Leathong joins us live from north of the city on Highway 400 with a look at the current conditions. How is it up there, Sean?
Well, Michelle and Nathan, the big change that's come in the temperature has really changed the situation here on the ground in the last couple of hours. It's been above freezing until about 4 o'clock today, and then it dipped to the freezing mark where we're at right now. That's allowed this snow to accumulate and change those conditions on the road.
Snow is coming down, road conditions are worsening, and drivers are taking precautions.
Filling her up, preparing for the long road ahead.
With wet snow falling throughout the afternoon, drivers at the en route in King City are making one last stop before heading onto the slushy roads.
I would say about slippery, so slushy.
It's getting pretty bad, but I think if you have winter tires and you're equipped and you got your coolant and all that, you should be fine.
A winter weather travel advisory is in effect for the entire GTA with snow coming in from the west. Through the afternoon, there were a few fender benders like this one in North York. The City of Toronto has salters out on the roads with plows ready as the snow piles up.
At 2.5 centimeters for expressways. We have about 5 centimeters for major roads, think transit routes, anything with a big hill on it. And then, our residential streets are about 8 centimeters, I should say, as well.
While the system could bring 5 to 10 centimeters to the GTA, Dave Phillips from Environment Canada notes there hasn't been much winter weather in the city this season.
If we get anything above 6 centimeters, we'll make it the biggest dump of snow we've had on any day this winter.
He says the majority of this snowfall will be wet and slushy. Earlier today, drivers were getting ready for what was projected to be a heavy storm.
Well, I keep my brush in my car all the time. I've got extra windshield washer fluid in the trunk, gets messy.
Ibrahim is an international student from India driving a truck part-time. This is his first winter in Canada.
Do you worry about driving in the snow at all?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I don't know, I see a lot of news, everything about the accidents of the trucks, but I don't know. I just keep praying to God and drive, that's it.
Through the afternoon, temperatures dropped and wet snow began sticking to GTA roads with conditions worsening into rush hour and a warning for tomorrow's drive.
We have a risk of freezing drizzle overnight tonight, and that can be sneaky because it doesn't look like a whole lot.
So for the evening and morning commute, drivers beware.
Your hands are on the steering wheel. Forget about the cell phone and the blaring music as it's not summer.
We gotta do what we gotta do. It's Canada.
Winter, Canada. Be safe and take your time.
So the temperature right now is holding at about 0, and overnight it's expected to dip a little bit below. And as you heard a little while ago, that can create a difficult situation when it comes to some freezing drizzle coming down, as people may think they're out of the woods and that the storm has passed, but the roads could be very slippery. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Nathan, Michelle, I'll send it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Sean. And snow clearing crews at Pearson Airport have been working hard to keep flights on track. This afternoon, officials say they received 1.3 centimeters of snow in a span of just 2 hours.
The snowfall continues across the region this hour. Because of where we're sitting temperature-wise, we're not dealing with major accumulations of snow on the ground, but this wet wintry conditions have definitely been a factor as folks move around the region. A live shot, our driver looking to be moving pretty good at this hour. Let's look at the radar, and this is how it looks. You can see the snow in Toronto, Kitchener, Hamilton, Niagara Falls. It's already transitioned to rain in the London area. It's important to take note there is a winter weather travel advisory in effect for our region, 2 to 5 centimeters possible. But again, it doesn't mean you're going to be shoveling all that out because of where we're sitting temperature-wise. If you look, we're sitting at 0 this hour in Toronto, in Milton as well, 1 in Burlington, 0 in Hamilton. Bit of a wind chill there, but nothing too bad. When is this system going to push out? We will tell you a little later in the newscast.
And a big disruption on GO Transit north of the city after a transport truck collided with a train. It happened over the noon hour in Vaughan at Langstaff Road and Connie Crescent. That's west of Dufferin. York Regional Police say no injuries were reported. They're investigating the cause of the crash and whether any charges will be laid.
More insight today from a former Toronto police officer who shot and killed a teenager on an empty streetcar in 2013.
A coroner's inquest is being held into the death of Sammy Yatim. And today, James Forcillo testified about that night and his prior incidents involving use of force. CTV's Scott Lightfoot joins us live with all the details. Scott.
Well, Nathan, Forcillo was asked about 5 use of force incidents that occurred in the same year. Now, those are incidents where he had to draw his weapon to effect an arrest. He says he was never provided with any type of feedback or mental health support from anyone inside Toronto Police after those incidents. And he says it's something he believes should be not only available, but provided to any frontline officer who's dealt with a stressful situation.
Taking the witness stand for the second day at the coroner's inquest into the death of Sammy Yatim, former Toronto Police Constable James Forcillo told jurors some of his recollections of responding to a call for a man with a knife on a streetcar on July 27, 2013. Forcillo said he didn't expect the man, later identified as 18-year-old Yatim, to still be on the streetcar when he arrived, saying he remembered the scene to be chaotic. What's unusual about it is that it's not Queen or King. It's not like a busy commercial area. It's more residential in that neighborhood. You've got the park right there. So it was so many people. Like when I got out of the car, I was like, wow, there's just people everywhere, and it's like chaos. That would be the best way to describe it, chaos. That chaos ended when Forcillo shot and killed Yatim. After being convicted of attempted murder in 2016, Forcillo is now on parole and testified at the coroner's inquest into Yatim's death, designed not to assign blame for the incident, but to find ways to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future. Forcillo told jurors about his experience working at 14 Division, a place he described as the flagship division of the Toronto Police Service. Forcillo said he was a workaholic and acknowledged that in 2012 he was involved in 5 different use of force incidents where he drew his firearm to effect an arrest. The lawyer for Sammy Yatim's mother asked Forcillo, after any of those incidents, did any of your superiors speak to you in terms of the stress you experienced in the incident, your mental health, with respect to what you'd experienced? Forcillo replied, absolutely not, no. Asher James then asked the former officer, at any point in time were you spoken about the cumulative effect of these events? I mean, you've had 5 in the span of some 7 or 8 months. Did anybody speak to you about the cumulative impacts that may have had on your stress or emotional well-being? Forcillo said, absolutely not. And a police officer's mental health is not something that is ever really brought up, because if you express that you're not doing well, they're going to take you off the road, right? So guys don't really speak about it. Forcillo told jurors that at the time it was part of policing culture to simply not discuss mental health or stress issues, and that he now believes all frontline officers should speak with a mental health professional on a regular basis, saying, you see some atrocious stuff on the road. You see people on the worst days of their lives. You see babies die. You see people struggling, people beat up, people like it's awful. It's like a meat grinder. And yeah, absolutely, being able to check in with somebody to say, hey, how are you doing? How are you handling all of this? Absolutely, that would have been super beneficial. I think we should be doing that regularly.
Now, at a coroner's inquest, the jurors are actually allowed to ask questions of those who are testifying. Today, one of the jurors asked Forcillo if there was something he could suggest that might prevent this from ever happening to another officer again. Forcillo's response was he thinks mandatory martial arts training is something that should be investigated for police. He says he's really gotten into jiu-jitsu since this incident, and he believes that training such as that would provide officers, frontline officers, with both the confidence and the skills to be able to better interact with people in crisis. Now, Forcillo's testimony has wrapped up. The inquest continues tomorrow. Reporting live, I'm Scott Lightfoot. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Scott. Was it an act of terrorism? The Nathaniel Veltman sentencing hearing resumes. The actions of a man who murdered 4 members of a Muslim family under the microscope.
Changes are coming to the curriculum for kindergarten students in Ontario.
The province's education minister is promising a focus on back-to-basics learning. So what does this new lesson plan spell for our youngest students? CTV's Beth McDonnell joins us live with all the details and reaction from parents. Beth.
Michelle, most of the parents we spoke to seem to emphasize they want their children to enjoy kindergarten. The government says it wants to make sure more students succeed.
And a cake, yes.
Learning to read with a new approach. It's coming to 250,000 students in Ontario's kindergarten classrooms. Education Minister Stephen Lecce says while a majority of students are meeting reading standards, it's important not to be complacent.
Ontario must keep our curriculum relevant to the latest evidence and to the labour market needs of our economy.
Published in 2022, the Ontario Human Rights Commission's Right to Read report on issues affecting students with reading disabilities made recommendations to the kindergarten curriculum.
How are you today?
Right now, the province's youngest students learn to read with what's often called balanced literacy, learning based more on context, like making a connection with an image. Already used in grades 1 to 8, the new approach, structured literacy, is systematic with an emphasis on phonetics.
We know with the structured literacy approach that it's one of those necessary for some, beneficial for all pieces. So even the kids who may pick up on reading more easily and not need as much of that are still going to benefit.
While kindergarten will remain plain-based, there will also be explicit, mandatory, and daily built-in instruction to set students up for success in later years. When it comes to math, students will start to learn about fractions and coding. Parents we spoke with seem open to the changes, with playing at school a top priority.
Too much instruction is not going to help them, I believe.
I think kids should enjoy kindergarten until they get to higher classes, and then the serious education can start.
I find this to be more of a grade 1 job, to be honest with you, learning how to read, but introduction for sure.
I guess time will tell if it'll work or not.
Ontario is playing catch-up compared to the UK and jurisdictions in the US, says this literacy development expert.
A lot of the types of activities that we promote in early literacy and the foundations of reading can be done in a fun way.
The new curriculum is still being developed with the goal of implementing it in September 2025. It's not clear yet how much instruction time there will be in kindergarten. The government says there will be a consultation process. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Back to Michelle and Nathan.
All right. Thank you, Beth. We turn to the latest in a homicide investigation in Oshawa. A 62-year-old man killed late last night.
Tonight, one suspect is in custody, but the search continues for a second man wanted in the case. CTV's John Musselman reports.
Durham Regional Police say a 62-year-old man was found with obvious signs of trauma outside this home on Dean Avenue around 11:30 last night. He was rushed to a hospital, but he did not survive. According to investigators, there was some kind of disturbance at this address. One man is in custody, and police say they are looking for a second suspect.
We don't have a description on that second male at this time, so we are making an appeal to the public. Anyone that has any information, anyone that lives in this area that might have seen anything out of the ordinary around 11:30 p.m. last night, anyone that has any video or any information to contact our homicide investigators.
At least 2 other locations on Dean Avenue have been sealed off with police tape as investigators conduct an evidence search. The name of the victim has not been released. The bungalow is located in South Oshawa near Ritson Road South. There is a commercial plaza across the street and industrial buildings adjacent to the home where this happened.
There's an autopsy that's scheduled for tomorrow, so once we get all that information, we can release further. But right now, I can just tell you that there were obvious signs of trauma to the body.
Police say the suspect currently in custody is known to police. The name of the victim has not been released.
Anyone with information about this case is asked to call Durham Regional Police Homicide or Crime Stoppers. John Musselman, CTV News in Oshawa.
And Durham police are also investigating a homicide at a Whitby long-term care home. Police say the 94-year-old female victim was involved in an altercation with another elderly resident, and it caused her to fall to the ground. She was injured and was taken to hospital where she died. Investigators are now consulting with the Crown Attorney's Office to determine if charges will be laid.
The hospital in Oakville was the scene of a fire today. The blaze broke out in a patient's room. Oakville fire officials say it was contained to the room on the 4th floor, and the patient was taken to the emergency department for treatment. Fire prevention investigators were called to the scene to determine the cause. A sentencing hearing resumed today for the man convicted of killing 4 members of a Muslim family in London.
The main focus today was on whether it was an act of terrorism. CTV's Nick Paparella reports.
Convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder,
23-year-old Nathaniel Veltman is going to be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years after he used his pickup truck and ran over a London Muslim family in June of 2021. However, if the Crown proves that this was an act of terrorism, it could have an impact when he comes up for parole. To prove terrorism, the prosecution needs to show the crime was motivated by ideology, religion, or politics. In her submission, federal Crown Attorney Sarah Sheikh told the court the offender was planning and deliberating to kill Muslims out of hatred. Sheikh pointed to Veltman's manifesto entitled A White Awakening, saying he held these hateful views. The offender aligns with white supremacy. His plan is to send a message through a violent act. In the first stage of the sentencing hearing 2 weeks ago, the court listened to more than 70 emotional victim impact statements from members of the Afzal family, community leaders, witnesses, and the 12-year-old son who was left orphaned. When the defense made its arguments against the terrorism designation, lawyer Christopher Hicks said Mr. Veltman doesn't advocate violence in the document A White Awakening. He had a mental deficiency at the time. Ultimately, the decision on whether the mass murders were terrorist activity fall into the hands of Justice Renee Pomerantz. Nick Paparella, CTV News.
One person was arrested after a shooting at Edmonton City Hall.
But there are other risks as well that we need to continue to work on closely.
Loud bangs were heard before people were told to go to a safe location. A Molotov cocktail was also thrown from the building's second floor. No injuries were reported. The investigation continues.
A passenger plane has crashed in the Northwest Territories. The aircraft lost control shortly after taking off near Fort Smith, about 740 kilometers south of Yellowknife. There have been no details about this crash or how many people were involved. The plane was a British Aerospace Jetstream registered to Northwestern Air Lease. A search and rescue operation is underway.
Police and coroners are planning to fly to the site of a helicopter crash that claimed the lives of 3 people in the northwestern part of the province. The aircraft was one of 3 helicopters that were carrying skiers into the backcountry when it went down yesterday afternoon, just west of Terrace. 4 other skiers were injured, all of whom were taken to hospital in critical condition.
Overseas, Israel says its forces have encircled the second largest city in the Gaza Strip. Khan Yunis has seen heavy fighting in recent days. Dozens of Palestinians have been killed or wounded, and thousands of civilians have fled further south. The UN says areas near a hospital and ambulance headquarters have been struck, and the fighting is blocking medical teams from reaching the wounded.
In Tel Aviv, a funeral was held for one of 24 Israeli soldiers killed yesterday. It was the country's deadliest day since the war began. 21 of them died when the blast from a rocket-propelled grenade triggered explosives they were preparing. It caused 2 buildings to collapse. At least 217 Israeli soldiers have been killed since the ground offensive began in late October. More than 25,000 people have died in the Gaza Strip, where 1/4 of the population is facing starvation.
In Ukraine, missile attacks today killed at least 18 people. The president says more than 130 others were injured in the Russian strikes throughout the country. More than 200 sites were hit, including nearly 140 dwellings. Kyiv and Kharkiv were among the places attacked in what the United Nations says appeared to be the heaviest bombardment since early this month, where hundreds of civilians were killed.
The odds are stacked against her, but Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley insists she's not going anywhere, regardless of what happens tonight.
The former UN ambassador is looking for a strong showing in the New Hampshire primary, squaring off against Donald Trump, who is heavily favored. CTV's Joy Malvin reports.
It's voting day here in New Hampshire. Polling stations are open. Donald Trump and Nikki Haley making their final pitches. The tiny town of Dixville Notch at midnight, unanimously voting for Haley, but she's going to need a lot more support than that, calling Trump the chaos candidate. And she's making the generational argument that both Trump and Joe Biden are too old for the presidency.
So I'm running against Donald Trump, and I'm not going to talk about an obituary just because y'all think we have to talk about it.
Many voters do say that they want someone new.
Donald Trump's just not a guy that I could ever give my vote to.
I voted for Trump.
Why?
Why not? Nikki Haley.
and I'll say it, anything but Trump.
And Haley has the best chance here because of undeclared or independents. They can vote here. Haley needs them to turn out in droves for her. It's her last best chance to slow down Trump's march.
Probably.
Dropping by a polling station today.
But we have great support, and most of the people that pulled out have already supported me.
Now, if the polls are correct, Trump has a pretty solid lead here. To drive that point home, Trump trotted out his former rivals on stage at a rally last night, and he's lining up Republican endorsements. Even those who condemned him for trying to overturn the presidential election now say that Trump, well, he's their guy.
I voted for Trump. Unfortunately, I wasn't a big fan of him at all. But, you know, when he was president, I mean, the economy for me was a little bit better than what it is now.
The former president is so confident of his chances, he's predicting the race for a Republican presidential nominee will be over after tonight. Joy Melvin, CTV News, Manchester, New Hampshire.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Trudeau says his government is preparing for a potential return of Donald Trump to the White House.
We made it through the challenges represented by the Trump administration 7 years ago for 4 years, where we put forward the fact that Canada and the U.S. do best when we do it together, when we're well integrated, when we recognize the prosperity that's created on both sides of the border. That's going to continue to be our approach. Obviously, Mr. Trump represents a certain amount of unpredictability, but we will make sure we're pulling together and preparing for whatever eventualities.
Trudeau says the Liberals will take a Team Canada strategy when engaging with the Americans. It will be led by the industry and trade ministers, along with our ambassador to the U.S.
In Virginia, Joe Biden shared the stage today with his vice president during a campaign event focusing on abortion rights.
I have met women who went to the emergency room and who were turned away because doctors were afraid they would be thrown in jail for providing care.
Did anyone think that this is where America was going in 2024? No! I could go on, but look, and let there be no mistake, the person most responsible for taking away this freedom in America is Donald Trump. Listen to what he says. Trump says he's proud that he overturned Roe v. Wade.
Biden and Harris were scheduled to meet with healthcare providers and reproductive rights groups afterwards. Abortion rights, a top issue for Democrats in the upcoming presidential election.
Still to come tonight, the nominations are in, the actors and films up for Academy Awards, and the Canadian connections. All the Oscar buzz later in the newscast.
And I'm Pat Foran coming up on Consumer Alert. It's so easy to send money now using your smartphone, but what happens if you accidentally send it to the wrong person? A father sent $5,000 to his son, but it ended up in the wrong account and he can't get it back. I'll have my reports just ahead.
The winter weather travel advisory remains in effect this hour. Here's a live look. Peak snowfall rates predicted about 1 to 2 centimeters an hour. A lot of the snow melting on contact. The big issue with this event, you want to adjust your driving, as our driver is doing at this hour. Here's your overnight at a glance. The flurries will end as the temperature rises, the low 1 degree. The norm for this time, minus 10. The snow will switch to drizzle, and when you walk out the door tomorrow morning, 2 degrees. Yes, we're in for a warm-up and some rain. We'll break it down for you a little later. And stay with us, by the way. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
When you're sending money like an e-transfer or an investment account, you want to take your time to make sure it's done right.
Listen to this. A father from Keswick was sending money to his son to help pay for his schooling when he sent it to the wrong person. Pat Foran has the story on Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Michelle. And Nathan, the mistake happened. The family thought it would be an easy fix, and they were shocked when it wasn't. The father sent $5,000, but it went to the wrong account, and now he can't get it back.
I wanted to transfer funds from my account to my son's account.
Paul Mifsud of Keswick uses Wealthsimple, an online investment management service. He wanted to transfer funds from his account to his son Kyle to help pay for his college education. Both use Wealthsimple, so he felt transferring the money would be easy to do.
It looked all good, $5,000 to my son Kyle, and I hit send, boom, done.
But Mifsud became concerned when his son didn't receive the funds. That's when he noticed the money was sent to the wrong account of someone also named Kyle. When he contacted Wealthsimple, he was told nothing could be done.
They were sympathetic, but came back and said, sorry, that money has left. It's irrevocable. It cannot be reversed. You're on your own.
On Wealthsimple's website, it does say it's not possible to cancel or recall funds after you've sent them.
At this point, it's not resolved, and I'm out $5,000. I feel like the victim.
CTV News contacted Wealthsimple and they agreed to review Mifsud's case. The company said in a statement, "We have reversed the $5,000 money transfer that he shared by mistake. We're deeply sorry for the frustration and inconvenience this caused him." Wealthsimple said it's making changes starting next month, which will provide an extra layer of protection for its clients.
We actually are rolling up some new capabilities next month that if you're sending to a contact that's new, we will provide an extra verification for you to make sure this is the right person. And then if not, you can cancel it.
Mifsud was grateful to get his money back.
My family, me, my son, everybody were delighted and relieved. CTV News was super influential in seeing the right conclusion from this situation. What a great ending to this.
And whenever you're transferring money or paying bills, triple check the account numbers and make sure you have the right person or company. If you make a mistake, it can be difficult or even impossible to get it back. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
All right, to the forecast. We know it's winter, and yes, we get snow, but it's kind of dicey when it's freezing mark and it snows and it turns into rain, freezing rain. The roads get slippery, and that's why there's all this concern.
You never know. Yeah, you never know really how it's going to play out, especially when you have the temperature that's hovering around the freezing mark and above the freezing mark. Look, this is Bay Street. Really, it's just wet roads. The big concern is for as you're driving as the snow is coming down. The wipers are definitely going to be going, so you want to take your time if you are driving out there. Let's have a look at what we're working with on this Tuesday. Currently 0 degrees. So we're at the freezing mark in Toronto as well as Wyerton. A little bit warmer out in Windsor. Wind chill, not much of a factor. Here's the satellite radar. Here's that system bringing snow across the region starting this afternoon and now throughout the evening. You can see the pink there. That's the mixing. The green is the rain. So it is going to transition into rain. Let's see how it plays out in the forecast reader. So by tonight and overnight, the system pushes out, but then you can see the rain behind it. And it's paused there at the noon hours. So really expect around lunchtime and afterwards, that's when you're going to be dealing with rain. A little bit of mixing around lunchtime. And if we push it forward, you can see just the massive rain, heavy at times in the yellow, and it'll push out by Thursday early in the morning. So here are tonight's lows. 1 degree. The normal is -10. Waterloo 0, Hamilton 1, Niagara Falls 2. And if we move forward to tomorrow's highs, you can see we're warming up. The high tomorrow, 3 degrees for this point in January. The normal is -2, so we are above seasonal. This is how it breaks down in the 7-day forecast. So the snow event will end overnight tonight. Then we're dealing with rain for tomorrow, mainly an afternoon and evening event. The high 3 degrees. Thursday, expect that we'll start the day fine, but there are afternoon and evening showers possible. The high 5 degrees warms up even more for Friday. We might see a peak of sun. Just keep in mind there might be some morning showers as well. Calms down for Saturday and 4 degrees. Sunday could see some flurries, the high 0. And then perhaps Monday, Tuesday, it's still early days, but we could see a little bit of sun. But talk about a big change from last week when we were in the deep freeze. Now we are dealing with very mild conditions for this time of year.
Opening up the conversation about mental health as we gear up for Bell Let's Talk Day tomorrow. Tonight, one woman shares her struggle with stigma and treatment. Her story after the break.
For far too many, the road to effective mental health diagnosis can be long with roadblocks like stigma and wait lists.
Even after the diagnosis, the journey can take months or even years. CTV Health reporter Pauline Chan spoke with one patient dealing with treatment-resistant bipolar disorder as we approach Bell Let's Talk Day.
Hey, Holly.
Good morning, Yolanda. How are you?
Good, good. Yolanda Zhang has been living with bipolar disorder for more than 20 years, since university.
I started having all these very dark thoughts about how I shouldn't be living and that I'm going to be a burden.
And she recalls how stigma was a problem, starting with her parents.
We'll take you to the doctors, but don't tell anyone.
She says she knows they were only trying to protect her, but it's not until she decided to speak out about her struggle that she felt her own strength.
I really wanted to use this opportunity and to be able to help more people, but in turn also helping myself.
It hasn't been an easy road.
I've had over 33 different combinations of medications over the past 23 years.
In December, she tried transcranial magnetic stimulation, which unfortunately did not help. Now she's begun ketamine infusions.
I went from feeling completely hopeless and burdening and suicidal one day to getting the treatment in the morning, and by the afternoon, I was more or less back to being myself again.
Ketamine is an anesthetic and psychedelic, not covered by OHIP, and still experimental in mental health treatment.
We do it at much lower doses, and we closely follow along for treatment impact, for side effects, and how they're progressing.
When we first start seeing people, we want to give them simpler treatments that have a lower side effect burden and are easier to deliver.
Dr. Mark Senior says the vast majority of patients are able to get some degree of relief when they begin mental health treatment.
But at the far end, there's that group of people who, for probably a variety of reasons, probably because of their life experience and also due to their genes and so on, their conditions are more serious.
Yolanda used to feel bipolar disorder made her a broken person until she discovered the Japanese art of kintsugi, which rebuilds broken ceramics.
And buying them using gold, so the end product is even more beautiful and stronger.
Hers has been a long and complex journey, but she now sees herself as beautifully unbroken. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
In 1940, the Los Angeles Times released the names of Academy Award winners before the ceremony. The next year, the Academy began using sealed envelopes.
We will have to wait to hear who those winners are this year, but we now know who is nominated. CTV's Andrea Case joins us now with the details. Andrea.
Nathan and Michelle, good evening. Yes, the envelope, please. Yeah, we've got to wait for that. Well, Oppenheimer leads the pack with 13 nominations, and so there's so many, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll tell you the details of who the Canadian nominees are.
Ryan Gosling in Barbie.
Perhaps the third time will be the charm for London, Ontario's Ryan Gosling. Now a three-time Oscar nominee, he is up for his scene-stealing role as Ken in Barbie.
I just don't know who I am without you.
You're Ken.
But it's Barbie and Ken. There is no just Ken.
Killers of the Flower Moon was dedicated in memory of Toronto-born Robbie Robertson, and now his work in the original score category was posthumously nominated for an Academy Award. Robertson's first after decades of composing music for 8 films by director Martin Scorsese.
What a good story this is. Childhood sweethearts who reconnect 20 years later and realize they were meant for each other.
In her feature directorial debut, Past Lives, Celine Song was nominated for her What If romantic drama in both the Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay categories. The National Film Board is no stranger to Oscar nominations. It not only has the honor of being the first Canadian producer to ever win an Academy Award, they have 12. This year, its Best Documentary nomination is for To Kill a Tiger, directed by Toronto-based Nisha Pahuja, the harrowing tale of the rape of a 13-year-old girl and the reaction and fallout to the crime.
Hello. Téléphone? Drogue? Oh?
Quebec filmmaker Vincent René Lorte says he has had the craziest morning of his life. His independent film and his company's first, Invincible, was nominated in the live-action short category. It took 5 years to compete and was inspired by his childhood friend who died at the age of 14. Halifax-raised filmmaker Ben Proudfoot is returning to the Academy Awards.
I love the violin.
this time for The Last Repair Shop, a nomination in the Best Documentary Short category. In 2021, he was nominated in the same category for A Concerto is a Conversation, and in 2022, he won for The Queen of Basketball.
Okay, so the Academy Awards, you've got some time to fill out your ballots March 10th right here on CTV. They'll be hosted once again by Jimmy Kimmel. Reporting for CTV News, I'm Andrea Case-Nathan. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Andrea. More dinosaurs may be clawing back to movie screens next year. A new Jurassic World now appears to be in the works.
Living biological attractions so astounding that they'll capture the imagination of the entire planet.
The project is said to be far enough along that Universal Pictures is looking at a possible 2025 release date. There are no plot details yet, but a new Jurassic era is expected with an all-new storyline. The last installment of the franchise was Jurassic World Dominion 2 years ago.
The Stars Tonight is brought to you by Lastman's Bad Boy, court-approved liquidation sale.
On the next CP24 Breakfast.
It's Bell Let's Talk Day, where we open up the conversation about mental health and the stigma surrounding it.
CP24 Breakfast up first at 5:30.
I was certain, after a lot of deliberation with colleagues and many others, that we took the right decision.
Updating our top stories, a judge has ruled it was unreasonable for the federal government to use the Emergencies Act to end the so-called Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa back in 2022. A decision released today says the move resulted in an infringement of constitutional rights.
All of a sudden, we heard an announcement that said there's another lockdown. We were kind of pushed into the classroom for like an hour. And then after an hour, they told us it got lifted to hold and secure.
Northview Secondary School was placed under lockdown for a second straight day following reports of at least one person with a weapon in the area. Yesterday, the school was placed under lockdown after a teen was found nearby with serious injuries after allegedly being attacked by a person with a machete.
The kindergarten curriculum will include new mandatory learning focused on early reading and math and STEM education as recommended by the Rights to Read report.
Ontario's education minister says the province is overhauling its kindergarten curriculum and going back to basics. The changes will take effect in 2025 and will focus on hands-on and play-based learning. On the markets, the Canadian dollar is up a fraction to end the day at 74.26 US. American benchmark oil lost 39 cents to close at 74.37 a barrel. And the TSX Composite Index gained 110 points to end the day at 20,034.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
The NBA suspended Tristan Thompson for 25 games without pay. The Cleveland Cavaliers center violated the league's anti-drug policy. It says the 32-year-old Brampton native tested positive for a growth hormone and a substance commonly used for bodybuilders and weightlifters. Thompson will begin serving his suspension tomorrow when the Cavs play Milwaukee.
The Toronto Raptors couldn't get it done against the shorthanded Grizzlies last night.
Look at this guy right here. Williams gets to the iron. Makes me sound
Both teams entered the night with nearly identical records, but it was Memphis coming out on top in the 108-100 win. It's the Raptors' third straight loss and eighth loss in their last 10. They'll face the Clippers on Friday.
The Toronto FC have named a new captain, the eighth in the team's history. Midfielder Jonathan Osorio takes over the role from Michael Bradley, who left the club at the end of last season. The 31-year-old is entering his 12th year with TFC and is the all-time leader in appearances with 341. Since joining the Reds in 2013, Osorio has scored 62 goals and registered 35 assists. TFC opens the season February 25th in Cincinnati. The home opener is March 9th at BMO Field.
On the ice, Toronto travels to Ottawa tonight in PWHL action. Toronto has won just 2 of 6 games this season and lost the first meeting at home against Ottawa 5-1. Ottawa, meantime, has failed to win this season at TD Place. Puck drop tonight is set for 7.
Still to come tonight, mission complete for Mexico's most famous giraffe. The effort to get him out of a small enclosure to his new home. A new beginning for Benito after the break.
Tonight, Republican rivals face off in a crucial moment on the presidential campaign trail.
I voted for Trump.
Anything but Trump.
We'll have the results on New Hampshire's pivotal primary and the rest of the day's top stories later on CTV National News.
A 2,000-kilometer mission of mercy was completed in Mexico today.
The country's most famous giraffe has arrived at his new home. Benito was transported to a safari park in central Mexico from a zoo in the northern part of the country. He had to deal with extreme temperatures there, as well as a small enclosure. But his new home offers a better climate. And the 4-year-old is moving in with a herd of 7 other giraffes. He'll also be eating food that his species enjoys in its natural habitat. They saved his neck.
Light snow falling this hour. The skaters waiting for the Zamboni to finish up there. Let's look at the radar. Here's what we're working with. The system continues to push eastward, bringing snow for Toronto, Kitchener, Hamilton, but it is going to transition to rain overnight. There'll be some mixing. That's why there's a winter weather travel advisory, 2 to 5 centimeters possible across the region, but really we're probably on the lower end. So tomorrow we're dealing with rain. You'll start the day dry, but afternoon showers push in and they'll stick around throughout the evening. 3 degrees the high. Thursday it warms up 5 for Thursday and Friday. Look at that, 6 degrees. A bit of the wet stuff as well.
Pretty good. All right. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Natalie Johnson with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.